Hello everyone, so I'm currently live streaming this to YouTube and I'm also recording this as well, as I'll be uploading it as a proper full video. So we'll be looking at firstly the facts surrounding the crash of Air India Flight 171, the 787-8 that crashed in Ahmedabad in India. Firstly, we'll be doing that, and then we will be kind of speculating, moving on to more theory-based stuff. But first of all, we will be sticking with concrete facts, and let's quickly acknowledge that this has been a terrible tragedy for everyone, of course, involved in the incident, all those who's perished, and all the families and everyone who knew those who were impacted in the disaster. May those who have perished rest in peace, and may the one survivor, allegedly one, there were some theories it was two, but allegedly one, be fine. Apparently he's not too bad, but let's hope he is fine. So firstly, this aircraft took off from Ahmedabad Airport, which is actually quite a big airport. I've never heard about it before, but it is, yeah, quite a big airport, kind of on the west of India. It's about between north and south, but it's very much on the west, quite close to, relatively close to Karachi actually, in Pakistan, and also not too far from Hyderabad. So this aircraft involved was a Boeing 787-8 aircraft. It was carrying 242 passengers out of a total capacity of 256 passengers. So it was about allegedly 80% full. I'm not too sure, I haven't done the calculations myself. And there was 18 business class seats in the aircraft, the other 238 being in economy. This aircraft was registered VT-ANB with two GE NX-1B engines, and it was delivered to Air India at the very start of 2014, making the aircraft just over 11 years old. Air India operates 33 of these 787 Dreamliners, 26 of them being 787-8s and 7 of them being Boeing 787-9 series aircraft. So if you're not that, I'm just googling something at the same time. If you're not that familiar with aviation, this Dreamliner is a relatively new aircraft by Boeing. It never had a hull loss before and wasn't really in any major incidents. This was the first hull loss of it. If we look at the fleet of Air India, just to kind of put into perspective, the whole fleet, they have 190 aircraft comprising of the Airbus A320 family, the A350, the 777 and the 787. Unfortunately, not many fully details are coming up of the aircraft that Air India have at the moment. So the flight had more than 80% of its capacity, and the crew, the plane, sorry. The plane also had 10 cabin crew and 2 pilots. Both pilots reportedly had more than 10,000 flying hours combined, which is, I'm actually not too sure. I think that's kind of on the lower end for a pilot. Let's quickly double check what the internet tells us. And that music you can hear in the background while I wait is Air India's boarding music. They have a few different variants. This one's a bit more slow paced. So yeah, it's saying that 10,000 is usually associated with like seniority and experience, so that's quite a lot. Let me figure out, because I'm pretty sure I've heard of people having like 30,000 hours before. So let's see. Someone recorded more than 65,000 hours. That's in the Guinness Book of World Records. So a typical pilot may retire with around 20,000 hours, it's saying. So they were quite experienced, you know, and they're flying the 787. Of the 242 occupants, the 242 people on board, 181 were Indian, 53 were British, 7 were Portuguese, and 1 was Canadian. In the previous 7 days, the aircraft reportedly made 13 flights, flying to airports such as Tokyo, Paris, Melbourne, Frankfurt, and Delhi. So what initially happened is it landed from safely from a domestic flight from New Delhi. And there was video footage, you can check this out on my channel if you want, of this aircraft from the interior, and someone was complaining and videoing that the AC was not on, and also that the in-flight entertainment screens were not working. So the aircraft, not obviously the actual engines and stuff, but the interior of the aircraft was not very well maintained, and that is something that Air India has attracted quite a lot of controversy for not having their aircraft and interiors so well maintained. Obviously, how can I put this in a way that may not offend people? I'm going to be blunt with it. Air India doesn't probably take care of the very best of all their aircraft. Obviously, they're still an airline, they still have to adhere to regulations and stuff like that, but it would be something kind of like AirAsia and wouldn't be to the standard of Singapore Airlines or Qatar Airways. It's just one of those airlines where they don't do the best. So they landed at from New Delhi. It was just over an hour flight at 11:16 Indian Standard Time. 11:16 in the morning, reportedly. And the time zone here is GMT plus 5.3. So there's a bit of controversy here. Some people are saying that the aircraft back taxied the full length of the runway. Some people said it didn't. But anyways, the aircraft took off from runway 23 at 1:38 in the afternoon, 1338 in the afternoon. The flight to London was 9 hours, so the fuel was, relatively full on the fuller end, but obviously not up to those like 17 hours that the aircraft can do. And the aircraft reached a recorded altitude of 630 feet. The impact zone was 1.8 kilometers away from the end of the runway, and it was reported less than 1 minute after takeoff. The crew declared an emergency to air traffic control. Let me find out a bit more details about what the Air India pilots said in Air India Flight 171. What is it, 171? Oh, okay. It seems like there's been a crash before with the Air India 171 number. Let me just double check that. I'm sorry, I'll be 1 second. I'm live streaming this, so... That's Air India Flight 101, okay. So I'm just using various sources. So... Okay, I'm just having this now. So as you know, at the time that the aircraft crashed, or the landing gear was still visible in the footage at the very end, so the landing gear was on, and it also appears that the flaps of the aircraft do not appear to be in the right position. Obviously the flaps help increase lift on takeoff and landing. Let me try to find those comments. Apparently this airport suffers from quite a flock of birds. And some people are speculating that the pilot could have made an error of pulling up the wrong thing. Instead of pulling up the gear, they pulled up the flaps. The gear was down probably for an excessive time period, so that could kind of indicate that occurring. However, it's pretty unlikely for a senior experienced pilot to pull up the wrong thing. I know you might kind of be in like an autopilot mode, but I reckon that's pretty unlikely. So allegedly there was a mayday call made, but they didn't respond when the tower asked about that. Oh, here we go. So allegedly, he said there was no frost and they were unable to lift. According to Boeing, the aircraft had underwent a service as recently as March. Now let's go on to some more details. Let me really quickly just check on the live stream. Not many people viewing, that's okay. We'll go on to the Survivor very soon and how interesting that is. So it hit a hostel building belonging to a medical college and obviously an explosion followed quite soon. Very soon the airport was temporarily closed, landing flights were diverted to airports in Delhi and Mumbai, and emergency services were already containing the fire and searching for survivors. About 50 minutes after that, Air India issued a statement on social media confirming that an incident occurred on one of their flights, and they further elaborated on that in the hours following. The airport then resumed normal operations about 2 hours later from that. And this is new news I haven't heard before. There was a flight from New York to Paris, operated by a 787-8 as well, that returned to Delhi. Some speculation was that the diversion was technical related, but allegedly Air India's CEO was on board, but they decided to stay in Paris, so they diverted back. Later that evening, Air India's CEO, Campbell Wilson, issued a statement about that. And later that evening, we had changes from our reports of everyone perishing on board, to that being that one survivor was on board. Then we had sorry, not one survivor was on board. Yeah, one survivor was on board the plane. Then we had some stories that there was a second survivor, but that appears to be not true. Moving on to this survivor now. He appeared very, if you saw Marvel footage, you would have seen him, and he appears very okay, you know, just some scratch marks really. Obviously what I say now is going to be less factual based and more kind of from what I've seen, so everything may not be completely accurate. I'm not going to be like Swiss 001 and say there were no survivors when there was in fact a survivor. But people have been speculating about whether he was actually a survivor or he's claiming to be a survivor. I believe he is a survivor. You can see his boarding pass, stuff like that. And he was also allegedly seated in seat 11A, although very recently I've been told this has changed. So I'm going to quickly check this very quickly. So allegedly he suffered impact injuries, and they're saying that it's in quotation marks here. I'm not sure who they're quoting though. He was thrown clear when the plane was, quote, split in two, end quote. So somehow the plane could have like split into two at that section he was at, and he's been able to evacuate through that hole. Or else, if he was seated at seat 11A, seat 11A is in the first row of economy on the aircraft behind the galley, so obviously he could have been shielded by the galley to some degree, and also in addition to that, seat 11A is an exit row seat, so he's been very close to the exit, and you know some people are like 7-8 rows away from the exit. That obviously adds time to evacuate, but he has evacuated very quickly. But obviously that brings us to the question: how was he able to evacuate then? Even if, let's say the plane split into two, let's just say for theory, the plane split into two, and exactly in front of him was this big gaping hole, and he could jump 2-3 meters and be out of harm's way. How come the people in seats B, C, D, E, F, G, H, J were unharmed? And if it was relating to the emergency exit, there are still rows 30 that were in front of an exit, behind an exit 2, and you know there's still 4 people on the plane who were so close to an exit 2. And as well, none of the crew survived, and there's a crew jump seat just in front of 11B, seat 11B, so that is a bit weird. It seems like there's no galley there actually, correction. It's just a bit hard with all these different seat maps and things like that. Now let's move on to more the theory-based part and what I think. Initially I was very, very, very sceptical and didn't believe this dual engine failure thing. How unlikely is that? Bird strike? Probably not. A dual burst strike, but now I believe that there could have been something wrong, and I've been looking at theories and they're saying that, you know, the likelihood, apologies again, of both engines failing at once is so unlikely. But if there's a problem with the fuel or some source like that, then both engines can obviously fail at once. So if there was the mixture not right, or it was contaminated with something, or clogged, then that could have led dual engine failure. People are also saying they rotated too early without flaps, things like that, and they were only kept up in the air to ground effect. If you don't know what ground effect is really quickly, if you're close to the ground, you know, you have the force against the ground and it kind of pushes the plane back up. However, you get less ground effect when you're taking off. And also, they got so high in the air, I really doubt that ground effect was still helping them that far up. So they could have retracted the flaps too early. Well, let's go to my opinion first. Either they've retracted the flaps too early and they stalled, which I think is quite unlikely because you're still speeding up on the takeoff roll and your flap retraction is quite slow. But either that's happened, or what has happened, which I think is more likely, has been a dual engine failure and they haven't been able to do anything, you know, because if you go into a stall with due to your flaps being retracted, you can put the plane down, full throttle, you can get out of it. And it didn't seem like there was any attempt at all. There was just a bit of more of a pull-up. But if you have a dual engine failure, you can't get out of that. The only thing you can do is to... apologies, I'm very tired. Working hard on a lot of videos. The only thing you can do is pull up, really. That's all you can try to do. It's just a normal, natural reflex. But the question is, why did the flaps appear up? So maybe that could have been an angle thing. I think it's likely the flaps were up. I don't know why. So that kind of now indicates and put me more into perspective of it being a pilot error issue. You know, what's the coincidence of them putting their flaps up early or forgetting to take their flaps, putting the flaps down in the first place, and then also the engines failing. But then again, this is Air India. We could have had a problem also with the flaps, and if they weren't going down, because there's been some reports that there were flap issues on some of the aircraft. How true they are, I really don't know. So that's what I think. I did have a bit more of a conversation with some of the av geeks about this, and they said some of them put forward the bird strike theory. I doubt that. Both big engines, new engines that are able to withstand bird strikes, unless the birds are very, very big, and both engines going at once. And it takes a little bit of time for them to eventually slow down as well. Oh, and also the Ram engine turbine, the RAT, the RAT, was allegedly, from the footage, out, indicating some sort of engine problem as well. So I kind of put forward my engine theory as well. There's two kind of theories. You've got the flaps and you've got the engines. But the flaps were up. So it must be that theory. But at the same time, the Ram engine turbine was out. So it must be the engine theory. So you've got these two kind of theories, separate entities, but at the same time they're both you know, they're disconnected, but they both appeared to have actually have happened. So it's like, which one is it? It surely could be a combination of both, but who knows? It really, really could be. So that's what I'm thinking. I feel like I'm yapping on a little bit too much. Let me really quickly try to see if I can find any more information. I'm trying to locate this galley. Okay, so behind the... directly behind business class was seat 7 or 8 or whatever the number is. It's a weird numbering system. You've got... not even a toilet there. That must be the... must be where the jump... not the jump seat, the crew seat is. So I don't know how this guy's been able to escape and the crew hasn't. Unless the aircraft has basically split in half, causing that person sitting there to end up very badly. And that could have happened if it was not split across in a straight line, but it splitted on an angle and everything. He's been so fortunate to be at the right spot. But it's still very weird. I do, however, believe he was a survivor. Let's see if there's any very recent news, so that by the time I upload this, it's not... old. So Air India, very recently, in the past 8 minutes ago, has been ordered to carry out additional maintenance inspections on Boeing 787-9 fleet aircraft with the GE Aerospace GE9X engines. This has been ordered by India's Ministry of Civil Aviation. And Boeing experts are heading to Ahmedabad. Now they're talking about speculation over whether seat 11A is the safest. Obviously not. That's the way the plane came down. The plane came down and basically, you can call it like a stall. The rear of the aircraft kind of hit the ground first. So it wasn't the front, because normally they say that the back is safer than the front. So that's what happened in that case. If the plane split or whatever, it's obviously strange. But of course the emergency exits, or being closer to the emergency exits, is going to be safer. But obviously it's still very unlikely for anything to happen in a plane. So if you're flying soon, you don't need to think, oh, I need the emergency exit row seat right now. So what they're saying now, some aviation expert was talking about it. And there was a whole bunch of people speculating, and all these people who don't know anything asking whether seat 11A is the safest. And he said it's not always 11A. 11A is just the emergency exit on this particular 787. So, of course, if you're flying a double-decker plane, 11A is not going to be your exit row seat. We've already covered that. It's funny, I've seen this very popular left-wing, very radical left-wing political channel, and all the comments were saying, oh, it's Boeing's fault, it's Boeing, another Boeing. This probably has nothing to do with Boeing, and even if it does, it's the first 787 hull loss. So, of course, what we saw with the 737 MAX was inexcusable from Boeing. But if there was something with the planes, I mean, obviously this is going to be very hard to hear, but they call me perfect all of the time. But I doubt that would happen. Especially kind of given that it was Air India. That makes me a little bit more doubtful of it being Boeing's fault. Here is someone's theory that allegedly an aviation expert, a former Qantas captain... Oh, it's paywalled. Let me really quickly open it and scroll through it to see what they're saying. Maybe screenshot it as well. Here's what's he saying. He was talking about the heat. Let me turn on screen record quickly. I can see the theory. This is from the Sydney Morning Herald now. There we go. Oh, I got the whole topic on screen record so quickly before it kicked me out. Okay, let's view this now. Donate to me $1 and you can hear the following story. Just kidding, all my contents are free. This former Qantas captain is saying it's impossible to tell if the RAT was deployed. Other people saying they saw it being deployed. And he's basically summing up what the RAT is. It's a small propeller that pops out into the airflow, much like a small wind turbine. It's a bit of a weird thing to say. Also, another thing I forgot to mention is that it was like 37 degrees on the ground, so obviously it's a bit hotter. He's saying at this stage, and I quote, "I'm reluctant to label this accident human error, but it's worth absorbing that at around the time the aircraft started its terminal descent to the ground, the undercarriage gear was still deployed. Landing gear retraction is the first configuration change after takeoff." End quote. So, basically, this prompts further speculation about the flap theory. And yeah, that makes me... Now I'm a bit more skewed towards the flap theory, because people could have been mistaking the RAM engine turbine being out. Potentially it could have been out, I don't know. No, that wouldn't have been why. So I'm leaning more towards pilot error and the flap theory now. I don't know how that would have really happened. You know, you'd think someone who's flown for so many hours in the aircraft wouldn't have made that mistake. It wasn't a trainee or like the third officer, someone sitting in the jump seat. So I'm just moving around in my seat, who made a mistake. But you know, if you're basically functioning on autopilot, you've had a bad day or something, you can make a mistake. I think that's enough for now. Be sure to check out my Discord server, Instagram for more updates. Share your story. If we can get more viewers, I would love to do a live stream again and open it up to my Discord voice call, and you guys can share your theories and talk on the stream as well. Anyways, that is the end of today's video. Where's my black screen? Let me see. I'm going to press just one button and it should come up. There we go. Very sad thing. Again, we hope that one guy's okay, but there's no hope really for anyone else left. If you know anyone who was involved in the crash, or you know anyone who knows anyone who was involved in the crash, my heart goes out to you. This must be a very difficult time. that's the end of today's video and stream. Thank you so much for watching this video and also this live stream. It doesn't seem like we have many viewers, but thank you very much anyways. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share. If you haven't already and you wish to share your ideas, to see more videos, things like that. And if you don't want to do that, that's also okay. Once again, thank you so much. Stay safe, have a fantastic day. I sincerely hope to see you in another video that is hopefully more pleasant than this. Thank you for watching. The live stream will continue. The video will stop. Goodbye.